Good afternoon. Welcome to training video materiality, specifically related to opinion units. Our issued reports based on opinion units are the tip of the iceberg in this case. Materiality for opinion units is what we're going to base those opinions on, and that's kind of the submerged part of the iceberg. Now, the only constant in life is change. That's according to Google, who says that this gentleman, Greek gentleman, said that, and I tend to agree with him. And if you are uncomfortable with change, don't want to be involved in change, I'm really sorry, but it's not going to go away. So hang in there. And okay. We perform audits of governmental entities and issue an opinion on each opinion unit contained in the financial statements. Okay? We are required to issue an opinion on each opinion unit contained in the financial statements. And there are some references. AUC 320, paragraph A5 says, a state or local governmental entity's applicable financial reporting framework requires the presentation of financial statements for its varied activities in various reporting units. Consequently, a reporting unit or aggregation of reporting units of the governmental entity represents an opinion unit to the auditor. Accordingly, in these cases, materiality is established for each opinion unit. Okay, that's important to remember. We're required to calculate materiality for each opinion unit based on that. Logically, if we were required to calculate materiality for each opinion unit, then our audit procedures need to be based on the respective opinion unit materiality. We cannot apply one materiality to all opinion units unless we apply the lowest opinion unit's materiality. So how do we apply these different levels of materiality? Let's look at one of the situations, emphasis one of the situations where we need to apply different levels of materiality, the search for unrecorded liabilities. How would we apply opinion unit materiality levels in this situation? I suggest that we start with the population. For example, for A1 example audit, a non-existent entity, here is a possible population of cash payments after year end. This population has 330 items to start with. And there you have it. Now we should point out, obviously, we can't get all 330 lines. We've just shown the top part here for this example. The first step in turning the population into a sorted population from which we can select items to test is to list the various funds, respective tolerable misstatement, and the scope we have set for each fund. In the example below, this is done in from G1 to I5. You see I've made up some various funds there and some tolerable misstatements, and based on those calculated the tolerable misstatement at 1/3, which will be our scope in this example. Again, in this example, I've, using my professional judgment, set the scope at 1/3 of tolerable misstatement. You may base it on something else, given the facts and circumstances of the audit that you're working on and so on. But again, just for this example, I've set it at that level. We could also set the scope at one level for the first month and a higher level for the next month and so on. But my goal is only to show how to apply materiality to the various opinion units, not discuss all the possibilities when doing a search for unrecorded liabilities. So we're not going to go down that road today. Second, we need to make sure that our data includes the expense account, more specifically the fund to which the cash payment has been charged. we will use this information to sort the payments into the various funds. We need to know the fund because the fund where the expense is recorded should also have the corresponding liability in most cases. We'll come back to that in a second. Also, the fund will show us the opinion unit materiality that is relevant. Now, when I say the corresponding liability, I'm talking generally the accounts payable, something of that nature. Now, it's possible that you could be looking at a government-wide liability, a bond or something of that nature, which isn't going to be tied to that fund. So that's the qualifier on this type of thing. But again, where does it show up? That's what you're going to apply the fund opinion unit materiality at that level. In the table shown below in column F, you can see that I have added imaginary expense account numbers where the first two digits are the fund number, and we'll sort based on those here in a few minutes. You need to make sure that the client provides this information. Somewhere in the expense account number will be some kind of code for the relevant fund that we need information for. You will also notice in the table below that I have also sorted the population by amount, largest to smallest. Now that we have the scope set, we can see that the opinion unit with the lowest scope is Fund 30, which has a scope of $1,900. Therefore, all amounts below $1,900 can now be ignored since we will only test amounts above our scope. The original population, which had 330 lines, is now down to 45 lines, from which we will select the items we are going to audit. With this information, we will sort first by column F, the fund, then by column E, the cash payment. This gives us the spreadsheet below. Lines 10 through 13 are above the scope set for Fund 10. Lines 14 to 18 are below the scope set for Fund 10. Most have been hidden as they are no longer relevant for our example, as they will not be tested. Lines 19 through 21 are above the scope set for Fund 20. Lines 22 to 34 are below the scope set for Fund 20. Again, most have been hidden as they are no longer relevant for our examples, as they will not be tested. Lines 35 through 39 are above the scope set for Fund 30. Since all amounts below the scope for Fund 30 have already been eliminated, there are no items below the scope for Fund 30. Lines 40 through 47 are above the scope set for Fund 40. Lines 48 to 54 are below the scope set for Fund 40. Most have been hidden as they are no longer relevant for our example, as they will not be tested. Below is a copy of the final items to be tested. Please note that the items tested for Fund 30 are all below the scope for all the other opinion units, but they are material for this opinion unit. In this example, I've actually not tested any of these items, so we'll just pretend that none of them turned out to be liabilities. Because again, this is just an example of how to do it. It should be noted that if we find unrecorded liabilities, determining which needs to be posted to the client's records needs to be done based on the opinion unit level materiality, not on entity-wide materiality. Is this the only way this can be done? No, that's would be a little absurd. So if you have another way to do this same type of thing, I don't have a problem with that, okay? The method you use to apply opinion unit level materiality is not as important as the fact that you do apply opinion unit materiality. Other factors which affect our materiality levels. First, if you have multiple opinion units, the only time you would not apply materiality at the respective opinion unit materiality level is if you elect to use the lowest opinion unit's materiality level. All of the opinion units are very similar. If all the opinion units are very similar, this may be an effective method. If all the funds are really close, you say, it's not that big a deal, I'll just use the lowest. And then you don't have to take the time to sort and slice and dice and all this kind of stuff and so on. So it may be an effective method. If, as the example above, one opinion unit's materiality is significantly lower than the others, using the lowest opinion unit's materiality level could greatly increase the amount of audit work we would need to do, and therefore probably not the best idea. Second, the opinion unit materiality that needs to be used is dependent on when the item being tested appears in the financial statements. For example, let's imagine that we are auditing a city which has the opinion units and funds described below. There you have it. Left column, we have the opinion unit. Next column is the fund. And so we may have multiple funds which combine to make a given opinion unit. And then we have a column that we made up again to say, here's fixed assets for that group of funds, the opinion unit, and so on. And then we've calculated an opinion unit tolerable statement for that opinion unit. So let's go through this. So what we want to do now is, assuming we are faced with the data below, let's review which materiality we would use to audit fixed assets for the following funds. Okay, let's talk about the electricity fund. That's down in the lower section, the proprietary funds. We would use tolerable statement in this table of 76,000 or some fraction thereof, because this is a major fund and it's reported as its own opinion unit. Now, again with the electricity fund, let's muddy the water and further assume that the electricity fund did not qualify as a major fund. But the city wants it presented as major because it's important to the users of the financial statements. In this case, we would still use the tolerable statement of 76,000. A non-major fund, which is reported as major, must be audited as major and would be treated as its own opinion unit when presented that way. Okay, water fund. Again, we would use the tolerable statement of 131,000 or some fraction thereof because this is a major fund and is reported as its own opinion unit. And remember that in our example here, we're talking about fixed assets. Okay, fixed assets for proprietary funds shows up right there in that opinion unit. So that's where it shows up, and that's the level we have to pick it at. How to do that. Okay, Fund 53, part of the golf course opinion unit. We would use the tolerable statement of 182,000 or some fraction there because this is combined with Fund 55 to make a single opinion unit. So the assets of the two, 53 and 55, are combined to make the $30 million total assets. That number is used to, or the revenues, but in this case, we're just assuming it's the fixed assets. That number would be used to come up with the opinion unit tolerable statement. And so that's what you would use. Now, Fund 54, last line down there, is part of the other proprietary funds. So when do the assets show up? Right there in that opinion unit. Okay, we would use tolerable statement of 93,000 or some fraction there because this is non-major fund. The reporting unit is a combination of all non-major funds, both proprietary and governmental. Okay, that's important to remember. Okay. In certain situations, other funds will also be included in the opinion unit. And you can see the example below. If you look, the purple bar down at the bottom shows the opinion units, and the remaining fund information is an aggregation of the other non-major governmental funds, the non-major proprietary funds, and then we've got a box around a bunch of others that sometimes show up. An internal service fund, which is included there with the proprietary funds, that would be included if you have one of those. Also, if you have any of those three different types of fiduciary funds, those would also be included, but agency funds would not. Okay, so all of those things combine together to become the aggregate as a single opinion unit. Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about the general fund or any other governmental fund. Since fixed assets are not recorded in the governmental funds, but are added when we move to governmental activities at the government-wide level, we would use total statement of 2,400,000 something or some fraction thereof, because the relevant opinion unit is the governmental activities now, because that's where they show up, even though they are assets of the general fund or assets of the RDA. They don't show up there. They show up at the governmental activities level, and that's the opinion unit that is relevant, and so you use that materiality. Okay. We are done today, and so if you have any questions, feel free to give me a buzz, email me, whatever. And again, this is not the only way. The example I used for doing a search for unrecorded liabilities, there are other ways. And if you have a more efficient way, I'm all for it. But just remember that the important thing is that we do need to take this into account as we do our audit work, not only in the search for unrecorded liabilities, but in other areas as well. We do need to audit at that opinion unit materiality level. Thank you, and we'll see you again sometime.